Hi, folks. Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about Matt Nuclear, friend of the show, Matt Nuclear, who, if you'll remember from our recent coverage, was hired by the Israel First enterprise known as a Daily Wire run by Ben Shapiro with what I speculated was the explicit goal of further splitting the conservative movement over foreign policy. In other words, Ben Shapiro is fighting a war against the dissident America First right, and rather than fight it himself, he hired Matt to do it on his behalf. Needless to say, that strategy hasn't exactly worked out very well for Matt, or Ben for that matter. The moment Matt joined the Daily Wire, he declared war on the Groypers and other factions of the America First movement. He's smeared yours truly multiple times using deceptively edited clips and outright false narratives in order to defend foreign influence and protect its ability to continue exerting control over the American Republic. None of that has played out particularly well for Matt. In fact, today, Matt was exposed by the Unfuck America Tour. Now, before anybody asks, yes, the Unfuck America Tour is a left-wing organization. They do pretty much the same kind of activist work that Turning Point USA does, just from the opposite side of the political spectrum. That'll probably raise some eyebrows. Some people may say, why are you citing a leftist organization to criticize a fellow conservative? Well, here's the thing. I don't actually consider Matt to be a fellow conservative. I've spoken to him privately numerous times at this point. I've debated him a couple of times. After our most recent debate, we hung out at a coffee shop where he told me and several other folks who were with us that he isn't really a Christian and doesn't particularly hold many conservative principles. Sure, he argues from an anti-woke perspective, but beyond that, I don't think he really fits inside the conservative box. In fact, I've told him numerous times about what's happening inside the Republican Party and the conservative movement. I've explained the divisions taking place and how his style of content is helping move those agendas, dividing the conservative movement forward, and he didn't seem to care in the slightest. Matt, in my opinion, is looking for a paycheck. He is a careerist. That's why I think it's completely fair game to expose his motives and his behavior. He's not here to help the conservative movement. He's not here to help Republicans get elected. He's here to build a career and make money in this political media space. And frankly, the label grifter gets thrown around a lot on the right by people from the left, including at people like myself. But if anyone fits that description here, it's Matt. He sold himself to this Israel First narrative, and that's why I think it's important to expose this. Not because I want to destroy Matt. I don't. I have no interest in purging him from the movement. This is about informing viewers so they understand who they're following, what they're watching, what someone's incentives are, and making everything transparent. As the saying goes, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and hopefully, maybe this even helps Matt turn things around and become a more principled commentator, someone who's speaking because they actually believe what they're saying, not because it's profitable or advances their career inside a movement they don't genuinely care about. Because look, when you're influencing millions of people to vote and think a certain way, motives matter. If you're simply doing it for money, there's something morally putrid about selling yourself in order to guide people toward positions that don't actually benefit them. There's a reason so many Americans are increasingly critical of the state of Israel, America's foreign policy toward Israel, and the billions of dollars we send overseas, and the wars we fought on behalf of Israel. People want America to take care of Americans. So when somebody is being paid to push a pro-foreign influence agenda, defending Miriam Edelson, defending sending more bombs to Israel, and spending virtually all of their time attacking the America First movement instead of engaging honestly with the arguments, you have to ask yourselves what the real objective is. Matt has basically become a single issue commentator. He defends Israel and he attacks the dissident America First right. It's pretty obvious why Ben Shapiro hired him. Now, all that being said, let's look at what the Unfuck America Tour posted on X. They wrote, thread. Today, we're publishing the biggest investigation yet into Matt Nuclear and his rise at the Daily Wire. We spent all day reviewing his leaked Grok chat history, and what we found was stranger than we expected. Inside his leaked Daily Wire contract, private Grok conversations, screenshots of personal chats, and a phone call transcript of an origin we're genuinely afraid to make a definitive comment on. According to the materials we reviewed, Grok appeared to become more than just an AI assistant. It was used as a sounding board for validation, praise, and discussions about his career. They also note that they've redacted all personal information belonging to private individuals. And then there's the thumbnail. It says, sold his soul for $8,000, which is actually pretty ironic. If you'll remember from my last video about Matt, I talked about us sitting in that coffee shop after our debate. I looked at him and said, well, at least now that you're with the Daily Wire, you can say you're getting paid the $7,000 to shill the propaganda. Then I added, well, hopefully you're getting paid more than that. He made a face. So I guess he was getting paid $8,000, only a $1,000 bump. Guess Ben Shapiro really wasn't on board to pay him anything too far above the $7,000. I guess that's how little people are willing to sell themselves for when it comes to Israel. Either way, good for you, buddy. Keep getting that paycheck. Praying for you. Anyway, they then start presenting documents that were apparently part of Matt's leaked chat history. In the first post, they write, in this first post of this thread, we're publishing the preliminary deal memo from Matt Nuclear's negotiations with the Daily Wire. This document summarizes the initial proposed terms of the agreement and provides context for everything that follows. The document basically outlines the terms of the agreement. There's a test period, a series option, and additional season options. It also discusses the artist services that Matt will be providing, including pre-production, production, post-production, contributor work, promotional appearances, and advertising content. Then it goes over exclusivity, compensation, and bonuses. Honestly, though, all of that is just boilerplate contract language. It's kind of boring, which is why we should just go to the next post where they publish what they claim is a full contract between Matt and the Daily Wire. They write, this is the agreement signed by both parties and sets out the terms of their working relationship. They then claim that Matt himself had to ask Grok to summarize the contract for him. The following tweet is just more pages from the contract, but then things actually start getting interesting because they then say, the following materials speak for themselves. We'll let you draw your own conclusions. And they include a screenshot, which isn't really much of anything. It just says the following file published in the leaked chat logs has been redacted out of an abundance of caution because they're unsure whether proper consent was obtained for the recording of certain communications with Daily Wire representatives. They note that call recording laws vary by state, and then it's just a giant redacted conversation. Honestly, I don't even know why they included this. There's really nothing there to look at unless they know the substance of this and they're just trying to hint at, hey, we could just make this public if we wanted to. The next post is where things actually start getting interesting. They write, now the fun part. Welcome to the mind of Matt Nuclear. They continue saying, in this conversation, he uses Grok as a sounding board to talk about his success, the people who follow him on X, and his interactions with Ben Shapiro. He brags about how a bottom-of-the-barrel nobody follows him on X and starts to build an odd relationship with Grok. They then show screenshots of Matt sharing his conversations with Ben Shapiro, screenshots of DMs, and him basically going back and forth with Grok about everything happening in his career. At one point, he's excited about Brent Schur, whoever that is, following him on Twitter, on X. I don't really know why that's such a huge accomplishment to Matt, but congratulations, buddy, I guess. The next post says, this one is interesting. Matt Nuclear spent so much time telling Grok about his accomplishments that we couldn't even fit the full conversation into a single tweet. We had to crop it. Apparently, he literally asks Grok to hype him up. Come on, bro. Really? Anyway, one of these conversations appears to be Matt trying to figure out whether or not he should go to college. He tells Grok, the thing is, though, if I went to college, it'd be for political science. Sure, it'd give me more credibility, but Daily Wire nor any of these companies are asking for a degree. Over half the people who graduated last year with a bachelor's still don't have a job, which he is actually accurate with. That should be very concerning to everybody. Then Matt starts listing all of his accomplishments and everything he's doing professionally. And toward the end, he says, not trying to grandstand, but I destroy college grads and 30-year-olds in debates all the time. The Daily Wire doesn't offer these contracts to any 19-year-olds. From there, he keeps talking about how surreal everything feels, how he's managed to turn all of this overnight viral stardom into a career, how he just graduated high school and is about to be making six figures, how he's gone viral and how everything is happening so quickly. Then he basically has Grok hype him up while he's like begging for validation from this machine, which honestly, we've all been there. Come on, admit it. Admit it. Anyway, the thread then gets into more details about Matt's finances. They write, in these images, Matt confirms he will be making around $8,000 a month. He then seeks Grok's validation. He says, am I successful for my age? Then celebrated when the AI told him yes. Okay, well, I guess he's basically saying, monetarily, I've outpaced my age. I'm impressed with myself. And Grok is sitting there affirming him like a good machine. Anyway, Matt then excitedly tells Grok that he's reached 4,400 total subscribers on YouTube and asks how much money he'll make. Grok estimates around $155 a month, which sounds about right. Matt then continues seeking Grok's admiration, saying, just wait until I start multi-streaming. That's when things will get interesting. Anyway, later on, Matt even asks Grok to calculate his finances because he only has about $261 left. And he's going to be traveling, I guess, to Los Angeles to film something. Anyway, we then get to something that stood out a bit because Unfuck America said in a post, one pattern kept showing up throughout these Grok chats. Matt Nuclear repeatedly brings up Judaism in conversations where it seems unrelated. According to the thread, in these screenshots, Matt asks whether he still would have been hired if he hated Israel or believed Jewish conspiracy theories, and then starts asking how extensively the Daily Wire vets guests before inviting them onto shows. Now, that really does make me wonder how much Matt's position on Israel has changed over the years. Truly interesting, because if that's the case, the guy really isn't beating the grifting allegations. Anyway, in the next post, Matt tells Grok that he replaced ChatGPT with Grok, and I don't know why you're announcing that to your AI, dude, but I guess you do you. You're a strange animal. Anyway, Unfuck America then writes in another tweet saying, after what felt like dozens of life updates on Grok, Matt Nuclear finally starts opening up about his personal life. He tells the AI he isn't interested in a romantic relationship with a human, says he rarely sees his friends, and describes himself as very antisocial. Somehow, Grok ended up learning more about this guy than most people will ever know. Wow. That's actually kind of crazy. See, I met this guy. I talked to him. I had no idea. I mean, he did seem a little odd and unnecessarily confrontational at times. But then again, I'm probably the worst person to judge that because I'm kind of an asshole. I'm extremely confrontational. I make jokes all the time, usually some pretty edgy stuff that gets under people's skin, and I tend to dig in when I feel like I'm bothering people. I like to fuck with people, what can I say? So maybe I'm not really the best judge of character in this department. Anyway, they wrap up the thread with a slide that says, and that concludes this chapter. Sincerely, Unfuck America. They then explain that Matt Nuclear inadvertently leaked all of this during a recent live stream by accidentally revealing the direct link to one of his Grok conversations. According to them, everything they obtained came solely from his poor operational security and his decision to share extensive confidential information with Grok in a format that was easily shareable. In summary, as Unfuck America says here, Matt cooked himself. The nuclear bomb has been officially dropped. They close it by saying that. So all that being said, what is the lesson here? Ultimately, this is extremely pathetic. As I mentioned before, this guy had the quickest speed run to becoming a lolcow that I have ever seen. He gets hired by the Daily Wire, and less than a week later, he's already one of the internet's favorite lolcows, getting farmed for content left and right, inviting criticism and exposés from both sides of the political aisle. Now, there are a few different things happening here that I think are important to point out. First is the fact that this is an attack coming from the left, but it's getting shared all over the dissident right. It's making the rounds throughout America First circles, Groyper circles, and among people who are genuinely critical of neocons, Israel Firsters, and the Daily Wire. Why is that? Well, because one of the very first things that Matt did after joining the Daily Wire was go on the offensive against the America First movement. He declared war on the Groypers and has been going balls to the wall, attacking them ever since. He's gone after Nick Fuentes. He's gone after people throughout the broader America First movement. He took shots at me as well. He has made attacking the dissident right one of the defining features of his online career. And when you do that, you're inevitably going to invite people to scrutinize you in return. For example, take what happened after the debate I did with Matt, Dean Withers, and Parker about a month ago. The very first clip that Matt chose to post from that debate wasn't one where we were discussing substance on the issues where he was owning the left. Instead, he falsely characterized me as a groyper and then deceptively edited the clip to make it appear as though I was foreign-born and had a dual or even triple allegiances to other countries. He conveniently removed the portion where I explained that I was born in the United States, that the additional citizenships I had were inherited from my parents as a child, and that I was actively renouncing them because I believe elected officials should have one country and one allegiance, the United States of America. He cut out all of that. He left in only the portion that made him look good, made it look like a gotcha, and turned it into what was essentially a deceptively edited hit piece. And honestly, that's just disgusting bad faith behavior. If you're going to build your online career by deceptively editing people and attacking them in bad faith, I think most people, regardless of whether they are on the political spectrum, whether left or right, are eventually going to conclude that you're just fair game. That's simply how the internet works. If you're going to make your career by attacking people on your own side, don't be surprised when people on your own side decide to dig into you. In fact, I even pointed this out a couple of days ago before this expose. See, when Zohran Mamdani's endorsed candidates started winning races in New York, one of Matt's first reactions wasn't to focus on the DSA taking over parts of New York. Instead, he immediately turned around and attacked Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. I responded to him at the time and basically said something like, wow, it really makes your agenda obvious when the DSA starts winning elections and your first instinct is to attack fellow conservatives instead of the people actually responsible. I mean, what are we doing here, brother? Needless to say, it's become increasingly obvious what Matt's role is in this game that Ben Shapiro hired him to play. Matt is here to drive a wedge inside the conservative movement. So yes, he's going to get attacked by the left, and he's also going to get attacked by the right. He's invited all of this onto himself. Outside of a relatively small Zionist enclave online, very few people are going to be eager to defend Matt, and that Zionist community simply isn't large enough or influential enough to shield him from the reputational damage that he's creating for himself. Honestly, I think this guy is on track to just implode. And I don't say that because I want to see him implode. I've just been on the internet long enough to recognize the pattern. I've watched this happen over and over again to creators who mistake short-term attention for long-term credibility. Matt has a trial period built into his contract, and he may not even make it through that trial period if he keeps going down this path. He's burning through his reputation at an incredible pace. And once your reputation is gone, it's extraordinarily difficult to get it back. The irony is that the broader conservative movement is overwhelmingly America first. There's a reason why President Trump continues using that slogan. Prioritizing American interests, putting domestic concerns ahead of foreign conflicts, and maintaining a generally non-interventionist approach are deeply rooted positions within today's conservative movement. And look, to put it bluntly, that's not going to get replaced by an agenda centered around putting Israel's interests ahead of America's. That's simply not where the movement is heading. So from a strategic standpoint, I think Matt made one of the worst calculations he could have made, choosing to take the position he's chosen to take in exchange for his $8,000 paycheck. Now, if he ever decides that he wants to broaden his horizons beyond this small Zionist enclave he's carved out for himself on X and other parts of the internet, rebuilding trust with a broader conservative movement is going to be incredibly difficult because he's alienated so many people so quickly. And he chose to do it by tying himself to a position that's becoming increasingly unpopular with the American public. More and more Americans want these wars to end. More Americans are questioning our relationship with Israel. Even boomers are becoming increasingly skeptical. So he didn't just pick an unpopular fight. He picked one that's becoming less popular by the day. And to me, that's one of the biggest lessons here. Chasing narratives, riding political waves, or taking whatever paycheck happens to be available is never going to substitute integrity. If you consistently make decisions based on principle rather than on what's fashionable or financially moment, you may grow more slowly. You may make less money in the short term. You may have less influence initially, but over time, you'll build something far more valuable than a paycheck. You'll build trust. You'll build a reputation. And eventually, you'll reap the rewards that come from people knowing you actually believe what you're saying. And that takes patience, and most people, to be fair, especially when they're young like Matt, are not interested in patience. They're looking for shortcuts. And again, I don't say any of this because I want to purge Matt from the movement. I actually like Matt. I genuinely think he's a smart guy. My criticism is that he's immature. He doesn't fully understand the position he's putting himself into, and he's choosing to operate in ways that are dishonest and bad faith because he thinks it'll get him ahead. That's not how you build a lasting reputation as a public figure. All he's really done is invite scrutiny, including from people who otherwise could have been his allies, because he decided the first people he wanted to attack were conservatives on his own side. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that traces back to Ben Shapiro. If Ben hadn't hired Matt probably would have been repeating these Zionist talking points, but he wouldn't have turned himself into such a universal clown and lolcow across the internet. That's ultimately what's happened here. It's unfortunate, but it's also one of the many lessons people should take away from the situation. The other lesson here is to be extremely careful about what you feed into AI. We're entering an era where not only can your AI conversations leak, but they can also potentially be used against you in legal proceedings. And a great example of this is the guy who was tried for starting the Palisades fire. Investigators reportedly pulled his ChatGPT conversations where he had allegedly been asking questions about how to start fires and how to get away with it and what to do afterward. Whether he deleted those chats or not is almost beside the point. The reality is that once you put something into these systems, you should assume it could exist somewhere forever. Everything is becoming fair game. So be careful about what you upload into AI, what you tell it, and what you trust it with. The other lesson is to be careful about who you choose to make into an enemy. The internet can make all of this feel like a video game, but it isn't. This is actually real life. There are people who spent years, sometimes decades, building different parts of the conservative movement, and we're now watching careerists like Matt come in and try to capitalize on what others have built. That's really what's happening here. We're in a transitional period where the end of MAGA and something else will follow, and Ben Shapiro is in that fight for relevance. The Daily Wire, in my opinion, is a declining institution within the conservative movement. They've been taking loss after loss, and now they're trying to regain control of the narrative while continuing to defend their preferred foreign policy topic of Israel. And unfortunately, Matt got caught up in the middle of all of that. I don't think he's stupid, by the way. I think it's quite the opposite. He's a pretty bright kid. He can memorize facts exceptionally well, and he can debate circles around most people. But intelligence isn't the same thing as experience. He's too inexperienced to see how all of the pieces are lining up around him, and he's slowly painting himself into a corner. It's going to be very difficult to escape. And look, at the end of the day, after all the money is gone, after all the followers disappear, after all the attention fades, all you really have left is your reputation. That's why it's better to stake your reputation on principles rather than on whatever happens to be profitable in the moment. I know that from personal experience. Years ago, I made the decision to walk away from the audience I had built because I no longer felt comfortable promoting the content I had been making. It wasn't easy. I took enormous financial and professional hits. It took me years to rebuild. In fact, I'm still rebuilding. But during that time, I learned a tremendous amount about myself, sharpened my worldview, and became much more confident in what I actually believe and standing by those beliefs. And by the way, all of that was followed by the ultimate test that came out of running for Congress. I was attacked from virtually every direction imaginable within the Republican Party. I was attacked by the Zionist caucus, the Girl Boss caucus, and the Gay Liberal caucus, all operating within the Republican Party. Because I dared to criticize Israel, I was labeled an anti-Semite. And they placed Zionist operators within the party placed false stories about me that were published in Jewish newspapers. Because I'm critical of modern gay ideology, activists within the Republican Party attacked me just as aggressively. I was smeared. I was banned from groups without any sort of justification. Yet I never changed my positions. I'm a social conservative, and I stayed a social conservative even after one of the board members of the LA GOP literally suggested that I abandon my pro-life position and support abortion and same-sex marriage because it would help me raise money. Can you believe that? One of the people helping run the party in Los Angeles suggested that I change my core beliefs for donations. that I prostitute myself. And I didn't do that. I didn't sell out. And I'm very happy that I didn't, because that would be something I would have to live with for the rest of my life. And that also goes without saying. I also got targeted because I criticized America's involvement in the conflict with Iran, and our continued support for Israel's wars. The Israel lobby turned against me. And when I refused to support purging the Groypers from the Republican Party, I started getting called a Nazi. I still didn't budge. I didn't turn on the Groypers, and I didn't abandon my principles, because I genuinely believe it's more productive to build a coalition than to constantly purge people from the movement. If we focus on principles while presenting practical, tangible ideas that improve American lives, that's how we will win elections, not by purging people. Unfortunately, too much of the conservative movement has been hijacked by blue dog Democrats who have spent years selling out the Republican Party because the Republican Party became desperate to gain relevance politically and culturally over the left. And eventually that created an environment where people like Matt can just walk in, collect the paycheck, and try to cash in on this movement. And again, if that's what he wants to do, then that's his decision. Go and make your money, brother. Just don't be surprised when more exposés like this come out, because when you choose to operate the way that Matt is operating, people are going to start looking into you and being suspicious. And that's just the reality. This isn't about trying to run Matt out of the movement. I don't want to purge him. I actually think he's a bright guy, as I said a moment ago. He memorizes facts incredibly well. He talks faster than almost anybody I've ever debated. He has the raw talent to become a tremendous asset to the conservative movement. I genuinely believe that. I just think he's green. He's inexperienced. And he's being used. And he doesn't realize it yet. If he approached people more honestly, operated in better faith, and stopped selling himself so cheaply for $8,000 a month, which isn't exactly a king's ransom, I think he could eventually earn the respect of a much broader audience. And maybe these are simple lessons he has to learn the hard way along the way. Maybe this is what God has placed in his path. I genuinely pray for him. My goal isn't to destroy. The goal here is never to destroy people on our side. The goal isn't to purge anybody. The goal is to shine sunlight on this behavior so people understand what's happening, who they're listening to, and what incentives may be driving the people shaping political conversations online today. I think it's important that we be as transparent as possible about people's motives, about the narratives being pushed, so we are not misled into the unthinkable, like a war with Iran. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.